Today we are, let's see if I can get over here, Algebra 2, Lesson 58, completing the square, which is the square root property. What we're learning here is that the square root property can be used in solving quadratic equations. So we're going to look at a different way to solve some quadratic equations, the different forms that they show up in, namely completing the square. Okay, so that's what this lesson is called, completing the square. All right, and they give me a couple different properties to look at. You notice that some of this looks kind of goofy because you can't necessarily type some of these symbols in where we want to look at. The first thing that we have is the square root property, which means if x squared equals a, where a is greater than 0, then x is the square root of a, or the negative square root of a. Okay, so we're going to get, if x squared equals a, then x equals the positive and negative square root of a for any value where a is greater than 0. Because if a is less than 0 and we have the square root of it, what we have is we have an irrational number. We have an imaginary number, an unreal number. Okay, so we're going to be working, you don't have to worry about that. We're not going to be working with unreal numbers today. Okay, but what we do want to realize is that x is ultimately going to end up equaling the positive and negative of the square root. Okay? The positive and negative of the square root. And the reason that is because if you look at this right here, if x squared equals a, whenever I take a negative times a negative, do I still get a positive? Yeah, and a positive times a positive is a positive. Right? That's how I can get a positive and negative for that a. Okay? All right. And then we have completing the square, the actual process. Completing the square given a quadratic of the form x squared plus bx. Stopping there. Now, normally what we're used to seeing is x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay? But they're saying that given this, x squared plus bx, we're going to add to it the square of half the coefficient of x, which is 1/2. We're going to take this right there. We're going to take b. We're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to square that quotient, okay, to create a perfect trinomial. So given this should be x squared, given x squared plus bx, we're going to take the b divided by 2 squared answer, and we're going to plug it in right there. Okay? And in the end, we'll get x plus b over 2 squared. Now, we'll actually be dealing with real numbers, and I know this is algebraic and may not make a whole lot of sense the way that it is. You can see all this information in your book. On page, you'll see it on page 413 and 415, okay, in those boxes. All right, or you'll have this video available to you probably within 15 minutes after getting finished with this. Okay, so let's get into our lesson and actually look at some options here. Okay? So I'm going to try to do a lot of our work off to the right-hand side. If I can pull up some of this. We have x squared plus 2x minus 6 equals 0. The first thing I want to do, so you want to listen closely here, okay, so we're going to take this c and we're going to move it over to this side. Okay, because we want to get it in the completing the square form, which is that x squared plus bx. Okay? So what we're going to get is we're going to get x squared plus 2x, and we're going to leave an empty spot right there, and we're going to move that negative 6 over to the other side. Now, how do I move negative 6 to the other side? What do I have to do to it? Add it. Okay, good. So we're going to get positive 6 right there. Now, if you remember from what we just covered, we're going to take the coefficient of x, which is 2. And we're going to take 2 divided by 2, and we're going to square it. What is 2 divided by 2? 1. Okay? So what we're going to do there is because it's a positive 1, we're going to put plus 1 right here and right there. Okay, so I've got x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 6 plus 1. Now what we want to do, because we should wind up with a perfect trinomial. Okay, this is a perfect trinomial, meaning that what I have here, okay, is x plus 1 times x plus 1 right there. Okay, do you follow me? Because I'd get x and x in those first two spots. Now I'm looking at a number that multiplies to be 1, but whenever I add it up, I get 2. All right, is that x plus 1 times x plus 1? Yes. All right, let's finish out over here. What is 6 plus 1? 7. Okay, I'm going to simplify this to x plus 1 squared. Can I do that? Yes. So what we're saying is that x plus 1 squared equals 7. Does this almost make sense up to this point? Now, because I want to solve for x, I have to undo this squared right here. How do I undo an exponent? Square root it. Do the root of the exponent. All right, so we're going to square root it. But do I just do it to the left-hand side? And to the right-hand side. All right, so what I have is x plus 1 equals, now, if you remember what we covered earlier on, is that where I have x squared equals a, is it just the square root of a, or is it positive, or is it positive and negative? Positive and negative. So this is x plus 1 equals the positive and negative square root of 7. Now, because I want to solve for x, what do I have to do with that 1? Subtract it to the other side. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus radical 7. Okay? Negative 1 plus or minus radical 7. You're going to see some of these questions show up in your homework. Go back, watch the video, take it step by step. If you take it one step after another and follow through, it's not as hard as it looks. Okay? All right. Let's move on to question number 2. Okay? All right. Now, what we have to watch out for, this is a tricky question because what we would normally do, what we would think we would do, is subtract 25 over to the other side, right? I know before a bunch of you start writing that down, don't do that. Because what we actually have here is we already have a perfect trinomial, okay? So let's talk about that. Let's try to factor x squared minus 10x plus 25. Well, I know I'm going to get x and x, right? It's got to be minus minus, right? Because it's minus plus, right? Two negative things are going to add up to be negative, but they're going to multiply to be positive, which is why I see a positive 25. What is that negative number going to be? 5, right? 5 and 5. Okay, so I've got x minus 5 times x minus 5 equals 54. Can I rewrite that right there? What can I rewrite that as? X minus 5 squared equals 54. Okay, now we're getting back to the point where on the other question we're seeing a similarity between at this point in this question and where we were in the other one. Can anybody tell me what we want to do? What's my next step? Square root both sides. There we go. Square root both sides. All right, so I'm going to get x minus 5 equals, do I need to add anything to the square root of 54? Plus or minus square root of 54. What do I want to do with that 5? Add it, so I get x equals 5 plus or minus. And before we go very far here, we probably want to do what with that square root of 54? Anybody know? I think I heard somebody say something. What do I want to do with the square root of 54? The tree thing. Okay, kind of like the upside down cake type of thing. All right, so you're right. We want to simplify the radical. Okay, what can I divide 54 by? 2, that's going to be 2 and what? 27? Will 27 divide by anything? Or 3? Well, yeah, but I want to keep it prime, and 9 isn't prime. So so that would be 3 and 9. Be 3 and 3. Is that correct? So what I wind up with there is I've got 3. So x equals 5 plus or minus 3 radical 6. Okay, and the reason 6 is because I'm leaving that 2 and that 3 in there. Okay, 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, there wasn't another 2 or another 3 to pull more out of that. So we get our answer right here. X equals 5 plus or minus 3 radical 6. Are there any questions up to this point? No? We're good so far? All right. All right, number 3. Number 3, we want to complete the square. All right, we just want to find out what number is going to go right there. What do I do? Not finding the multiples of 14. Remember, let's not guess at this. Let's go back to what we are learning specifically in this lesson. Lexi. Yes, except it's not just 14 divided by 2, it's negative 14 divided by 2, and that answer squared. Okay, what's negative 14 divided by 2? Negative 7. What's negative 7 times negative 7? 49. Because this equals 49, we're going to put 49 right there. So we get x squared minus 14x plus 49. Okay? Questions about that? That one was pretty easy, right? That didn't require us to do a whole lot. We just had to remember that that's what we're trying to do with this in order to complete that square and get a perfect trinomial. Okay? Let's see. Number 4, complete the square and factor the resulting perfect square trinomial. What do I want to do with the negative 22? Thinking about number 3? Okay, so what am I writing? Okay, what is negative 22 divided by 2? Negative 11. What's negative 11 times negative 11? 121. Okay, so we're saying that this is 121 right here. Okay, and that's the work that we're all showing. We're all working this out. Great. All right, it says complete the square. Okay. And factor the resulting square trinomial. So we can go ahead and we can eliminate these options. We know that we're going to get 121. Now what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to factor it. Okay, we know we're going to get x and x. Am I going to get plus or minus? Minus, minus, right? Minus, minus. And what's my number in here? 11 and 11, which I can simplify as x minus 11, what? Squared, all right? Which is why I get b, x minus 11 squared. How many of us are feeling a little bit better about this than when we first started? When that first question we saw like it was 10 steps, we feel a little bit better about it now. Okay, good. The more we do this, math is like sports. It's all about practice. Okay, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. Solve number 5 by completing the square. All right, so we're just imagining that instead of x, we're using r, which is what we're doing. All right. What do I want to do? Let's see if I got this right. 4, 5. Here we go. All right. What do I want to do with the negative 4? Divide it by 2. And then what? Then square it. What's negative 4 divided by 2? Okay, negative 2. What's negative 2 times negative 2? 4. So let's rewrite this. We have r squared minus 4r plus 4, right? And then over here I've got 12. What else do I need to do here? Think back at question number 1. What? All right, so but we're not there yet. Okay, we're still missing. We need to add 4 where? To the 12. Good. All right. I'm purposefully leaving stuff out so that I can see if you can follow it. R squared minus 4r plus 4 equals 16. All right. What do I want to do with this line now? Factor it. Very good. All right. So let's factor it. We're going to get r and r. What's my operations? Minus, minus. Okay, what's on the inside? 2 and 2, so we can change that up and call it r minus 2 what? Squared. R minus 2 squared equals 16. Now what? There we go, square root both sides, okay. All right, so I get r minus 2 equals the square root of 16, but what is the square root of 16? 4. But just 4? Because this is plus or minus, right? So it should be plus or minus 4. Now what do I need to do? Add 2. Okay, good. So r equals 2 plus or minus 4. If I can. Okay. Let's see. But we're not quite done yet because I've got nice numbers there to work with. Let's go ahead and do both those things, because if I look up here, we're solving, right? We're getting actual numbers in here, right? Not plus or minuses or anything like that. So what 2 things do I need to do? No? What? No? I've got r equals 2 plus or minus 4. Make 2 equations. What 2 equations am I going to make? Not quite. You guys are making this way more difficult than it needs to be. How about 2 plus 4? And 2 minus 4. What is 2 plus 4? What is 2 minus 4? Let's see. 6 or negative 2. So my answer here is 6 or negative 2b, right there. Were we making that more difficult than it needed to be? If they leave me and I've got, nice, neat whole numbers to work with, we can go ahead and get our solution there. All right. Okay. Hopefully I can do this one. 6. Okay. So Gardner wants to create a rectangular vegetable garden in a backyard. All right, let's go ahead and make that. She wants to have a total area of 120 square feet. It should be 12 feet longer than it is wide. So we've got our width and our width plus 12. Okay. What dimension should she use for the vegetable garden? Round your answer to the nearest foot. So what I'm going to do is, because a rectangle's area is based upon length times width, I'm going to take W times W plus 12 and set that equal to 120. Now I'm going to distribute, so I get W squared plus 12W equals 120. What do I want to do with that 12W now? Divide by 2 and? So 12 divided by 2 squared. What's 12 divided by 2?
6.
What's 6 squared? 36. Sorry. Equals 36. So we're going to take W squared plus 12W plus 36 equals, okay, 120 plus 36, which is 156, right? Now, what do I do with this? Factor it. All right, so factor it. All right, that's going to be W plus what? 6. Can we just go ahead and write W plus 6 squared equals 156? What do I want to do with both of those? Square root. We are getting it now. All right, and that's going to be plus or minus square root of 156, right? Okay, I'm going to clean up some space there. You guys should already have that down. So w plus 6 equals plus or minus. What I'm going to do is let's go ahead and figure out the prime factorization of 156. What's 156 divided by 2?
78.
2 and 78. What's 78 divided by 2? Probably 39. 39 will probably divide by 3. 13. Okay, so I'm stuck with 2 plus or minus 2 radical 39, right? Because 3 times 13 is 39. All right, and I need to subtract 6, correct? So W equals negative 6 plus or minus 2 radical 39, right? Okay. So now what we have to do is we actually need to calculate some things, okay? So we have two options. W could be negative 6 plus 2 radical 39, or it could be negative 6 minus 2 radical 39. We have to figure that out, okay? So let's do some calculations. All right, hopefully we've got our work right. So let's see, we've got negative 6, let's try minus 2 radical 39. All right, that gives me negative 18. Can the width be negative? No. Okay, so that was maybe a waste of my time. Negative 6 plus 2 radical 39. Okay? That gives me let's call it 6.5, or 6.49 if you want, because that's an actual option up here, right? So if the width is 6.49, which we found out that it has to be, then what is the length? 18.49, because all I'm doing to that is adding what? Adding 12, because they said that my length was my width plus 12. So 6.49 plus 12 is 18.49. We get that? Great. Okay? You might see that question on a test. All right, we probably, because I think you guys get out of here at 10:36, probably won't get every one of these questions done. But what I'm going to do is 7 through 10, you guys pick a question real quick, and we can at least solve one more question before you go. First number I hear, that's the one I'm going to do. 10. All right, somebody said 10. Solve 10 by completing the square. All right, let's look at 10. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 10 to the other side. So we got x squared plus 2x equals positive 10. Take 2, divide by 2, and square it, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1. Add 1 to both sides. All right? Now we can factor, right? And we should get x plus 1 squared equals 11, correct? Did I go too quick there? Can we understand it? I went too quick? Okay. All right. Did you understand how we got the 1? Okay. And I added 1 to each side. So essentially what I'm saying here is that x plus 1 times x plus 1, right? X squared, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 times 1 is 1. You get me now? Okay. All right, so x plus 1 times x plus 1 is x plus 1 squared equals 11. Okay, because 10 plus 1 is 11. Now we're going to do what to both sides? Square root. Is it just square root of 11? Equals plus or minus square root of 11. We can't simplify that. What do I need to do with the 1? Subtract it. X equals negative 1 plus or minus square root of 11. Right, and that is the answer. All right, so we didn't do 7, 8, or 9. Those answers are in, I think, in the packet that I've sent you. So, all right, you guys have got that information. We feel pretty good about this. Can we complete the square? Awesome. All right, provided that all of that recorded, I'm going to hit stop.